Dreams, visions, and deja vu may provide windows into one of the oldest and greatest mysteries known to humanity. What happens to us when we die? One possible answer, and just as great a mystery, is reincarnation. As our investigation takes us to places from beyond.
I'd like you to move back in time as I count from 10 down to 1.
The event of death is turning of a page, turning of a day to the next day morning, turning of a year to the next year, turning of a life to the next life.
Hello, and welcome to From Beyond. I'm Joey Travolta. Throughout history, there's been a strong belief in reincarnation. Ancient myth and fable, archaeological findings, and beliefs amongst the world's great religions all show this to be true.
I don't think we should dismiss ideas that survive for thousands of years.
Well, I'd say I believe in it because I think that throughout time, many different cultures have had views on it.
I personally believe in reincarnation.
It's entirely possible, but very hard to prove.
I'm not real certain if it exists. I believe there's an afterlife.
I think it's definitely possible.
Today, at least 1/4 of all Americans subscribe to this belief. Some of the foremost thinkers, writers, and scientists view this as a new horizon to be explored.
In the beginning, I felt that I didn't believe in these metaphysical areas.
It's pretty exciting. I've had people come downstairs with their eyes are just like this. They can't believe they actually saw it so vividly.
Sort of like doing this kind of thing in a lark and all of a sudden going, whoa, you know, here I am.
It may come as a surprise that reincarnation is not just the product of Eastern religions. It also has ties in Western thought, stemming from Christianity and Judaism. It was also taught by European, African, and Native American ancestors.
The term reincarnation is found almost everywhere in intellectual history and since the dawn of time.
There are so many references to it, now shaded in the Bible.
That Jesus Christ himself believed in reincarnation.
It was the Council of Nicaea and Constantinople that took out reincarnation in the Bible. So it was part of Christian thought.
I'm sure many of the Christian scholars have questioned these comments, and they would cite various paragraphs from various Christian scriptures.
Some are very clear and some are not quite so clear. Some are just more interpretations.
For example, that is from St. John's 9-2, and it goes, and his disciples asked him, that is Jesus Christ, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? It becomes very clear is that at that particular time, Jesus Christ and his disciples understood that if this man was to be born blind, it could have been the sins of his or his parents, and if it was his sins, then his sins must have been committed. Obviously, since he was blind from the birth, it had to be from the past life.
It's interesting to me because the fact that we live one life or 2 lives or 10, I don't think negates any of the religious obligations that people would find themselves under. In fact, I consider if we really believe that we have an immortal soul, it's through this avenue of reincarnation that we come to realize our responsibility in that immortality.
The Buddhists have this dramatic diagram. I have this poster on my wall to kind of remind me. It's a poster of the birth and death cycle, and that we're all on this cycle, and whether we know it or not, whether we believe in incarnation or not, doesn't matter. If it's true, you're just doing it. And if you're not conscious of the processes, you're stuck on that wheel. The object isn't to get enamored with reincarnation. The object is to get off the wheel and move on to whatever is two. I don't know what two is.
In Greek culture, reincarnation goes back as far as Pythagoras and Plato. It's a large, important doctrine in Hinduism, and it's also found in all sorts of tribal cultures such as African and Native American. Reincarnation is also found in a small Jewish sect called the Kabbalist. Even though this concept contradicts traditional Jewish doctrines, reincarnation continues to appear with its own insistence.
The perplexing side of this is the widespread character of belief over the centuries in different cultures.
What purpose does a belief in life after death serve? Why does mankind find comfort in the knowledge that there's something more to life than this?
One reason people may believe in reincarnation is to provide explanations for situations which are otherwise simply too painful. The pain of pain isn't just physical, it's the meaninglessness of it. You know, people say ouch, but almost immediately they say why? Why does this happen? And they long for some answer. And if you give them an answer to the question why, the pain is somewhat abated. If you say, well, this is because of something that happened in an earlier life, then they can say, oh.
There's nobody on the earth who does not believe in the goodness of the Supreme Being. The people might call them by different names. You might call it God, you may call Jesus Christ, you may call Gautam Buddha, you can call it cosmic consciousness, you can call by any name. But there is no question in anybody's mind that everybody ascribes to that cosmic consciousness nothing but good values. Even though everybody seems to believe it, when we look around, get out of the temple or get out of the church, we see the shootings by the roadside, the young people being killed and murdered. Obvious, unfortunate things seem to be happening to good people who otherwise do nothing but good actions. And then we tend to question, if God is nothing but goodness, why do these things happen?
Certainly reincarnation makes for a more just world. One of the great pains of this life is a sense of injustice when things don't work out as they should have, and they don't work out in time, and one dies, and there are these loose ends. And if you are going to go around again and again, there's still time for injustice to be corrected.
Only when one understands the continuum of time, there are several lifespans through which one goes, then one is able to grasp the idea of the obvious inappropriate things that seem to occur in this life. The question that naturally comes up, why are we here in the first place? We human beings who are here for the purposes of learning. But the key is, each and every one of us is going to finish that education. It may take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. Convert those years into lifetimes. Then that concept will be a lot easier.
I don't think we should dismiss ideas that survive for thousands of years. There's something interesting enough about them to give them attention.
People from all walks of life sometimes remember past lives. This can happen to anyone at any time. These experiences are referred to as spontaneous recall.
These memories are triggered, generally. They might be triggered by visiting a place that either is or strongly resembles some place from the past. It can be triggered by an interaction with someone that we've known before, or they can sometimes be triggered just by reaching the age at which an event happened in another life.
I was with a friend, and I closed my eyes and started seeing like a newsreel in full color behind my eyelids and thought I was losing my mind.
I was not easy to hypnotize. I'm not very gullible. I don't. People have flashbacks and things, and I haven't. I mean, I'm sort of really here in the physical world a little bit more than I'd like to be. But my friend and I traveled to Mesa Verde a few years ago, and we were at Cliff Palace, which is a beautiful place, and it's the Anasazi Indian area. And as I was walking past, past the ruins, I suddenly got this tremendous flashback, and I grabbed her arm and said, "I was here." And I just started to sob, and I just, again, this person who's not very emotional doesn't do this very often. I began to sob, and I said I was a young girl, and I can feel her, and it was a beautiful life, and I was here in this place, and I couldn't come out of it for a long time. I couldn't get rid of it, that knowing that this was a life I had lived.
Often we can have triggers through our senses, such as smell, things we may see. We may, as an example, find ourselves on the top of a ladder looking down, and that viewpoint may trigger spontaneously a past life recall of being in a high place and falling. It may be something such as a sense of touch. It may be an encounter in a relationship.
Well, the one that it appeals to me the most, I've studied with a Hawaiian shaman who has really become my mentor. And one day he said to me, to us, I want you to go back to a past life in which you were a shaman. And of course I had all of these visions in my head of when I was a shaman, and they were all beautiful and wonderful, and it was very glamorous. And he just said, I want you to go back. And he said, no. So it's like an instantaneous thing. And there I was, like in about 1100 in South America, a greasy old woman, with greasy hair and a dirty blanket. And I was sitting in front of a fire, and the children were afraid of me. They were peering at me from the rocks. From that experience, I knew that was me, or a part of me. And it wasn't just something that I might have conjured up in a hypnotist, subject that maybe wasn't real or was. But this was so. This was so real.
Children seem more susceptible to remembering other lifetimes.
There's worldwide research done by Ian Stevenson, who's a psychiatrist, on children and their spontaneous memories, and they tend between the years of either 2 or 2.5 to 6 or 7 to have these memories that come up.
It seems that children, because they are unbiased by their conscious mind's thinking, have the ability to more easily remember and recall this as a matter of fact.
For the first year or 2 of life, we have a lot of delta activity, and so the baby sleeps. But from about 1 or 2 years of age to 6 or 7 years of age, there's a predominance or an extra amount of theta brain waves. And it's that theta state that's the deep meditative or trance state that seems to be the window to the unconscious. And so the memories surface then.
They sometimes have the ability, because they're not told that they can't, see this other dimension, which I call a spiritual realm. Sometimes they refer to imaginary playmates, seeing things that adults can't see. Now here again, it can be their imagination, but let's say from my viewpoint in working with children, that their minds are very spontaneous in their ability to, you ask them the question, and they'll tell you. Have you ever been someone else other than who you are now? Yes. Who were you? Draw a picture of it. If they seem to have knowledge that goes beyond their years, prodigies are a perfect example of that. Because when you have a child at the age of 4 who can sit down and write masterpieces of music or play instruments, then that seems to be an indication that something is occurring here.
I had the experience of meeting a little 3-year-old for the first time, and he came up to me and his mother introduced, and he took a look at me and said, "Oh, I remember you." I said, "Oh, when?" He goes, "Well, I was big like you, and we were married." I said, "Oh, we were? Oh, geez, was it nice?" It was okay. But he proceeded to talk a little bit, and he had been in World War II, and he could talk about, he wasn't a fighter pilot. He described where he sat and what he did, but he didn't have the words for it, but he could tell you he hit a button and things happened, and it turned out he was a bombardier. But now being a 3-year-old, who would tell him that?
Reports of past lives can come from several sources. One such source is regressive hypnosis.
Go down deeper and deeper. 3.
They can regress a subject back in time, perhaps even to a previous life.
Regression therapy is one way a troubled soul can reach down into the depths of their subconscious minds and work through the horrors from their other lives that may be plaguing them today. Can reliving a past life experience heal the wounds trapped in our psyches?
The idea is if every person has had past lives, then the evidence of their past lives is sitting with them the moment they walk in. So if a person were to come to me usually with a particular issue, then we would focus on that issue, whether it be a fear of heights, a phobia, and often by moving back to the initial sensitizing event or the source of that energy, we can learn from it, we can work to heal it, and if it's in a past life, often there may be patterns where this has occurred in many past lives.
Now, the standard technique, the most frequently used, is conventional hypnosis, where an individual is put into a trance state, taken to as deep a level of relaxation as they can, and then given suggestions to go back in time to the source of the difficulty that they're working with.
Often, if an event in a current lifetime is too difficult to retrieve, too traumatic to experience, one of the most valuable techniques is kind of going into a past life, which is kind of going around through the back door, so to say. I may say something like, "I'd like you to move back in time as I count from 10 down to 1. All time is open and available to you. We want to move back in time to the source, the very first time this was ever a part of your experience. And this person, as you observe them, the emotions may be very high in their content, body suggestions, or from a viewpoint you may see trembling, you may see facial expressions that really seem to be a gesture that this person is really in an experience."
Tom Hyder is a spiritual counselor and clinical hypnotherapist who has devoted himself to helping others solve their current problems by unlocking traumas that have occurred in their past. Pat works with Tom to resolve issues she has in her life. She has agreed to be regressed to a past life to see if her problems lie deep within her psyche.
Relaxing you down to a place where the body's relaxed, but it's important that your conscious mind be engaged. So some of the misnomers about hypnosis and past life regressions is that people think that they're going to be out cold and not remember anything, but actually you're going to find that you will remember everything that happens. In fact, you'll move into a state where your senses are heightened. You're standing up at the top of this long and winding spiral staircase. And as you look down, you can see the steps below you. You can see step 2 and 3 and 4. But below step 4, it's so far down that you can't see that far. But this particular staircase has 10 steps. And when we reach the bottom, you're going to be in a place where it's very easy to go back in time, giving the yes and the no for the higher self, And again, only the higher self can move the right hand. Number 7, deep, very, very deep.
It's a jail. A prison.
Mm-hmm.
I am in a prison. A jail.
Are you a prisoner here?
Mm-hmm.
Are there others with you in this cell, or are you alone?
There are others nearby. I'm in this cell alone. Duh, there's a band in my neck too. That's why I'm in the corner. I'm bound to the corner.
And again, I would just ask you to notice, look at your hands and feet, and are these the hands and feet of a man or a woman?
A woman.
You know, they're in an altered state, most definitely. I think it's preferable to have them in a state that's just between the unconscious sort of trance state that we think of hypnosis and regular consciousness, because my goal is increasing their consciousness, not taking them to a place they don't quite remember and then bringing them back and then having them either listen to a tape or me tell them. I want as much of their consciousness there as possible.
I'm running.
Yes. So they're chasing you.
I can do past life work in many different ways. I can just sit down and tune in and start reading all their past lifetimes, or the ones that are important for them for the time that I'm doing the session. Or I can regress them through it, which I prefer to do because that's much more fun. They can actually see their life and experience it.
I was puzzled by the suddenness of it. Sort of like doing this kind of thing in a lark and all of a sudden going, whoa, here I am. And I found myself as a crippled chimney sweep in England. And I experienced myself all crippled up, and I heard myself talking in kind of a Cockney accent. And whoever was directing me moved me on to my death in that life, and I experienced a tremendous release because of being freed of that crippled body. And it was very real and very awesome.
A channel is a person with strong psychic abilities who has agreed to act as a conduit between this world and the next.
I had a group together, and one of the ladies started channeling this Native American man called Red Dog. I felt my face becoming thin and long, and I knew something was happening. I wasn't exactly sure what. And Red Dog pointed to me and said, "You killed my wife." And then I realized what was happening, that who I was in that past lifetime had killed his wife. It was a very frightening experience, actually, with the spirit that was channeling through, because it could have been, he could have killed me. The force within that woman was not her own force. The strength within that woman was not her own strength.
And they've already poked me with a hot poker here.
In the left hip.
Many times.
And higher self, does Pat in this body in this lifetime still carry in her physical body in the left hip and left side the ramifications of this poking? Issues, yes. What is your understanding of why this is occurring?
I helped a midwife. I was a midwife.
So you helped with the birth.
Yes. And I gave her herbs. And the baby was stillborn. They said I killed the baby. That offended God.
Higher Self, is this a time before the year 1800? Is it a time before the year 1500?
Because the conscious mind controls voice, a common hypnotic technique installs a yes or no signal system that taps directly into the subconscious mind.
Yes. Is it between the years 1700 and 1800? Yes. Is it between 1750 and 1800? No. I'm going to call out decades, and I want you to answer yes when you get to the right decade. The decade of 1700 to 1710? Yes? Is that a yes, Higher Self? No. 1710 to 1720? Yes. As I call out years, Higher Self, just answer yes in the right year. Year 1710, 1711, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. The year 1717, yes.
Both of my arms, wrists, and both of my ankles.
It's been my experience as a healer that our physical bodies will hold on the cellular level memories until those memories are brought up to the conscious mind. So the way I think of that is that within everyone's body is literally the culmination of all of our previous and past life experiences.
If we scratch the surface, people will produce these memories, or what looks like memories, quite easily, quite well, quite coherently, and they don't have the products, the resemblance to fantasy that we would expect. In other words, it's not easy to change the memory.
Past life experiences sometimes come as intuitive flashes, which stem from deep levels of the mind. These experiences are often intense and come in the form of dreams, visions, and déjà vu.
What purpose do dreams serve? And what can they tell us about our lives?
Dreams are the way that we connect with soul, with our expanded consciousness, to release the tensions, help us to process the emotional, and move through layers of our consciousness that perhaps would otherwise overwhelm us. So I believe dreams are therapeutic, and that they're essential to the human nature, and that when we dream, we are connecting with that consciousness that is moving us through things that, if we tried to do them on a waking basis, would just overwhelm our lives.
What secrets are locked inside our dreams? What can they tell us about the inner workings of our minds?
A dream by itself usually has some disguising in it, and it takes some work to get beneath the disguise.
Reoccurring dreams are something to look at as a sign or an indication of a past life, if it is of a past life nature, or if it has a high emotional inner content or theme.
After death, what events transpire before rebirth? Do we sleep? Are we dreaming? What exactly gets passed on?
the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it just describes the area between death and reincarnation, and that's just one more segment of life, like in the other segment, like our living, what we think of as life. This is just another piece of it, and that the body is, the mind is conscious and aware during that period. We just tend to think the person's dead, they're dead. They have a belief of not moving the body for 3 days, allowing the body to be there undisturbed, to allow the best environment for movement through that area, which they call the bardos. They're little rooms in that period between death and reincarnation. And so the Book of the Dead is designed to be read to someone who's died. And so people will take turns reading that for a period of 3 days or maybe more. And it's like a guidebook during that time. I've been fascinated by that idea of what, if reincarnation is the way it works, and I personally think it does, it is. It's the only thing for me that makes sense, that there's a kind of continuity, that we all aren't rolling our dice on one throw here, that we make it or we don't. Then what is it that gets passed on? Is it our ego self? And I've come to the view that it isn't. The me that is Stu Webb does not move on, in my view. There's some higher consciousness portion of my psyche.
There is one major reason why we do not remember our past lives. The major reason is to maintain the purity of this existence. Why were we in the previous lives? We were in the past lives to learn some educational lessons. You are in a postgraduate class. Why do you want to relive the life of a freshman? What is important as a postgraduate level is to remember the lessons that you learn in the classroom as a freshman. And that happens to all the time.
What gets passed on seems, well, it's obviously something conscious. And we would refer to it as the soul. And the soul then acts as a container for our memories as well as our edges of growth. I generally actually prefer to think of the whole process as one long life rather than life after life. It's just interspersed with these periods of forgetfulness.
Nobody seems to know how you get from your old body to your new. That's a complete mystery.
Perhaps it's an attunement or a vibration that attracts us, a resonance, perhaps the way if you have two guitars side by side and you hit one G string, the other G string will vibrate. And it's like that sound will find its own place and vibrate as well. That's the closest I can come as to what takes us one to the other. But the whole process, if you look at the reincarnation stuff, it's the attachments, the need that has to be worked out at some time, that has to find a vehicle through which to express that. And so what happens then, someone gets pregnant, and there's all kinds of dynamics around that pregnancy. The dynamics between the two parents and the family and the society within which the parents find themselves. Well, some of those are going to reflect the dynamic that this person's karma is trying to express.
Karma is an accumulation of experience. It's all that you remember you are and have an obligation to fulfill in any subsequent lifetime. It isn't bad or good. It simply is experience.
That karmic system, what we call a person, will then attach itself to that developing fetus.
I think we do know what our soul needs to learn, and so we are guided to be born into the right families. I think oftentimes it's difficult because when you're out of body, apparently you forget how difficult it is to be in body and be on this earth plane. And so when you're in spirit form, I think sometimes people are really grandiose and say, okay, I'm going to have this and this and this happen to me so I can really excel in this lifetime. I'm not going to fool around. I'm just going to have it all happen. And then you get in body and you go, oy vey, what did I do?
Do you believe in love at first sight? Why do some people set you on edge, while others you feel you have known forever? One explanation could be that we reincarnate in groups. Chances are that the people who are close to you now were close to you before, in another life.
We'll often be with people that we were before. People have found that they were their own grandparents.
At the last moment of your life in this lifetime, everything is as it should be. Nothing is missing. You can let go and move into that light, move into that peace, and be free. You don't have to stay here and take care of your loved ones or your children. You don't have to feel an obligation to come back and take care of unfinished business. This journey, every part of it, is what it's supposed to be. The negative, the good, is here for learning.
Some people believed to be dead from accidents and illness have returned with fantastic descriptions of being outside their bodies, seeing bright lights, or being in a tunnel or a void.
Come on, okay, has this family been notified?
Watch him. VFib. He's in VFib, let's shock him. 200.
Blood pressure, 80 over 30. Clear.
Everybody clear.
Just a minute.
300.
Come on, hang in there. Come on,
That's
come
it.
on.
He's gone.
Perhaps these experiences indicate that we may survive death. And if we survive death, then perhaps we also reincarnate.
Before I got into hypnotherapy, I worked as a respiratory therapist in a hospital. And as a respiratory therapist, I had the ability to be close to death experiences. Often I would be there when they would call a code, and I'd be doing CPR on a person, and sometimes they didn't make it. So I began to notice and sense the idea of a soul's presence at the moment of death.
When you look at the dead body, you know something's missing, and it isn't just a heartbeat or breath. There's something very different about a dead body. It's as though something has left it, and it's just a shell. And sometimes we're a little afraid of dead bodies, possibly for that reason. They don't seem right.
In my regressions, I consider it absolutely vital that the individual go through the death of that life, whether it was traumatic or not. And as a consequence, I've watched people die from the inside, probably thousands of times, and they describe an extraordinarily similar pattern, that of the sense of release and of becoming lighter and floating. Now sometimes there'll be an attachment, though, that will hold them there for some time. And that, I think, is what we often see as ghosts or haunting spirits. But eventually, the light, for want of a better word, is there for them, and we can travel with them into the light.
I was in this place, which describing it somehow detracts from it. If you say perfect, it is more than that. And it is light, and it is love without a name. It is absolute acceptance and no thought. I don't know how long I stood there, but it felt like eons of, without any time, eons of expanded spatial experience.
The most important thing, I think, about understanding reincarnation, or that we go on, and this isn't our only life, is that you lose your fear of death. And, this is one of some people's most basic fears. I'm going to die, I won't be me, I won't be here, I'm all done.
I had one particular experience that really resonated with me. I was working with a 46-year-old brain-dead woman who was on a ventilating machine. And I found myself given orders to kind of take the machine off, and if she would continue breathing on her own, they would continue to maintain support of her. What was unusual is I found myself alone with this woman in a cubicle during that moment of taking off the respirator. I started to walk away, and then a part of me said I couldn't leave her alone to die by herself. So I turned around and pulled up a chair, slid my arm underneath her arm, and she never took a breath for a half an hour. At that moment, she stopped, her heartbeat stopped. I felt an energy come up through my arm and come up through me. And here again in the past, I had worked ambulance, and I'm a pretty level-headed person, pretty grounded, not easily shooken, and pretty objective in my viewpoint of death. I felt a wonderful sense of love. I felt a peacefulness, a euphoria, a sense of well-being that I couldn't explain. And so when I looked back upon that experience, what I felt was that because I had opened my heart, which I feel is the key to healing, unconditional love for another soul, another being, that she gave me a gift as she left her physical body, which was a statement to let me know that there is a beyond, that there is a spiritual body.
If we go away with one thought, is that if you read those NDEs, what we call near-death experiences, you will find a uniform pattern. I want to only stress only one of it, is that each and every individual who has come back with a positive feeling. It was not torturous, it was pleasant, it was peaceful, it was blissful, it was contentful, it was happy. The key, if we can take as a lesson today, is the fact that death is not the end of the world. After death, there is no tragedy. A person who has passed away is in a peaceful situation. If we can get that idea in our mind, the taboo about the death, the scare about the death, the concern about what's going to happen if I die, will go away. Near-death experiences are positive from that point.
There is no solid, concrete evidence of life after death. There are stories, theories, and ancient beliefs. The greatest mystery known to man will have to remain so until we cross over and transcend this lifetime, searching for the answer somewhere from beyond.
I definitely want to come back as a lawyer.
If we get a chance to come back as somebody else, I don't know, I'd like to be some type of bird.
I'd like to come back as Cleopatra. Maybe as a man, just to see what that's like.
A dolphin. Explore the ocean.
Great golfer or tennis player.
Pope John Paul II.
A supermodel.
A cat.
James Dean, if you could go back.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
I believe after you die, you
that's
go
why-
somewhere and your spirit goes somewhere, but the idea of reincarnation is it comes back maybe onto this earth in some other form, human or not. And that, I guess I can't buy into.
But see, we don't know. So it's a very much of a possibility.
But I don't know
not
anybody that ever has
Well,
told
we're
me
not-
they've had that experience.
But that's because nobody really knows. And I think it's a possibility.